Charity game with Ohio State. How did they react? Did they react like they lost by 30 like you wanted them to? What was that practice like?
Yeah, they did a nice job. Came in with the right approach, and we had a good 3 days of practice leading up to today. We're obviously off for Media Day.
Were you able to take them down a peg after that game? Because that was kind of your objective for that practice.
I'm sorry?
Were you able to take them down a peg from the game? Because I think that was on your goal.
I think how we respond to things is a big part of what our day-to-day approach is always going to be about. And this week to date, they've responded well to having very relative success in a charity game.
Coach, for a guy like Tyler Betsy, how important is it for him to get that experience this early in the season?
Yeah, I think for Tyler, here's a young man that we just have a great deal of confidence in, and we think can impact our team this year. I looked at it last year. Very, very few freshmen were able to impact games in this league. And the ones that could are really special. I think Tyler is special like that. I think he has the ability, all the opportunities for him to get out there and play meaningful minutes with the lights on or against other opponents are really valuable for his growth.
After watching the film versus Ohio State, was there anything you guys were able to take away from that scrimmage after the fact of Friday night?
Yeah, I think as I saw sitting on the sideline, there's just a number of things that aren't where they need to be. And it's so early in the year for both teams. The result of the possession may not be indicative of how you played the possession. So we had a number of possessions where there were positive results, meaning we got to stop, or we forced a turnover, or we scored, but the things we did to get that result weren't there. We just happened to be lucky, or both teams were a little sloppy at times. So let's not get caught up in all the results, because over time you got to get great at doing the little things that create results. We're not great at that yet, and we were able to point a lot of that out on film to our players.
You kind of talked about Dylan Mitchell and how high level his game is, but from last year to this year with 6 of your 8 returners coming back, what type of impact does he have on that rotation and lineup?
I tell you, when we recruited Dylan, one of the most important things after just what we would normally in recruiting, we're always looking for somebody that aligns with who we are, what we're about, and how we play. We're looking for that alignment. All right. With Dylan, certainly that was there, and that was first. But the next thing we were looking at was how does that person fit in with those returning core guys. And we felt like Dylan fit in so well because he could do so many different things, and his versatility allowed him to play in so many different spots on both sides of the ball, right? And so I think people that have gotten a short glimpse can see, what we saw there. And what's neat is who Dylan is the first couple of weeks of the season is not going to be who he is in January, February, and March. Like any player, there's still going to be a process for assimilating him, and I just think he can be terrific if he stays at it like he has right so far.
Did you have to try to find a balance last year between adjusting your coaching to the Big 12 and also kind of staying true to who you are and not changing too much about the new conference?
I think every year, the challenge of coaching is to make sure that your team has foundational values for how you play, what you're about, how you do things. And then you also have the ability to make adjustments and prepare for the opponent. And that fine line is never losing sight of the core of who you are while doing your job to prepare and adjust based on who you're playing. And I think when you go too far one way or the other, you can make mistakes as a coach. So I don't think that was any different last year than any other year, other than the fact that every game was a new experience, And that made walking that line maybe a little more challenging than when you've been playing against the same teams year after year in the league.
Why do you specifically, like why do you coach? Like, what's the biggest motivator of why you chose this profession?
We're getting deep today. And now we get real press conference. All right, that's a great question. And if I'm answering totally honestly, I would say that why I got into coaching or why I thought I wanted to coach got me to where I am, or got me into coaching, and then what I found getting in coaching is somewhat different, but all relevant. So I think why I wanted to coach and why I got into coaching is because I'm so passionate about basketball. It's like I love our game. It is my life, my hobby, and everything in between. And so it makes sense that when you're done playing to get into coaching. I also am crazy competitive. Like, I love the high stakes of our game, and especially this level of our game. And I'd say that drove me into coaching, and that probably had a lot to do with what I valued about it early on. None of that's gone anywhere. I think the longer I've done it, it's become something even deeper to me. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy being on a team and leading a team. And I really, really enjoy being around young people and being a part of their maturation process. I won't take credit for any of the guys that I've coached and where they are now, but it's really, really neat to feel like in some small way you were a part of it. You know, when you have guys that you coached 10 years ago and 12 years ago, and they're living out their dreams in their life, and they're married with kids and families, and you feel like you're not responsible for that, but you were a part of that, it gives your life meaning. And so the longer I've been in coaching, the deeper my purpose for it has become. But those original things are still big too.
This will be the last deep question, but obviously Tony Bennett retired last week. Did that kind of make you step back and look at everything about having to look at the perspective of why you coach, or was that kind of just he's in his own situation and you're in yours?
I just think that when a guy like Tony Bennett steps down, somebody I've looked up to, and I think about this all the time over the last week. You know, when I was trying to get in coaching, I went around and watched college basketball practice all over the country. The entire month of February, I went around watching practices the year before I started my coaching career. And I went to watch Tony coach at Washington State. This is years and years ago. And Ron Sanchez, who's the now the interim head coach, or the head coach at Virginia, was an assistant then. And so this week I've really thought about that. And I got to see him as a young head coach at Washington State. And then obviously I was coaching in the same region as him for years while he was at Virginia, coached against him. And he's a guy I really looked up to. You know, you just hate to see a guy like that leave our game. It's not good for our game, and I hope we don't have many more people walk away early. And so I didn't like to see that.
It's kind of a
The pressure of preseason rankings. They're nice, but is there added pressure?
I've never cared about when you're slighted with preseason rankings or when you're picked, you know, highly or picked nationally. None of that's ever mattered one bit to me as a coach, and I try to explain that to our team. And that's how I feel this year. It doesn't. I don't pay one bit of attention to it. But, and I say but, the one thing that I will say is that it's great for our university, and it's great for our program and our fans and our players, given the retention. You know, like I really like that our players get to see, hey, when you choose to come back, people recognize that, and that should matter. But in terms of what it means when the ball goes up here in a couple weeks, that stuff's out the window. So I don't pay a lot of attention. But in today's society, with all of our returning players, I like that there's been some recognition for that for sure.
You mentioned retention and returning players. During the preseason media availability, Dan mentioned that himself, Jizzle, and Seamoss all had opportunities to leave, but decided to come back because of their belief in you and the system. What does that kind of mean to what you're building at Cincinnati?
Everything. That's everything to me. I mean, so, you know, Keegan asked a question about why do you coach? I mean, hope my answer was clear. The relationships really matter to me. And there needs to be a deeper sense of purpose to this other than just trying to win a basketball game. And when kids that you know, and those are three that you mentioned, there's actually others, but when kids that you know could leave and could potentially have really changed financial things, and they choose to stay, I think, for what I believe are the right reasons. You know, you're trying to build a culture and a program and a team. You know, there's a connectivity and a purpose, again, much bigger than just the surface level stuff. I was very, very proud of that, and we're going to continue to try to keep building that type of a culture. And by the way, I believe that in the long term, they're individually going to be rewarded for that too. And like I always say this to every team, if you make sacrifices for the team, and the team will then have more success, every individual will win more. I really believe that our guys are starting to get that. And the more they buy into that, the more down the road individually, they're going to really, really benefit long term. I do believe that.
As kind of a follow-up to that, with the transfer portal and NIL currently involved, have you had to change your recruiting process at all, or you always go back to your core values of relationships?
It's not a simple answer. Yes and no. I mean, I think there's aspects of what's going on in college basketball that you've had to completely adjust to and make some changes to how you recruit. And then, but then again, the foundation of what we believe, the characteristics we're looking for, the way that we try to build relationships, the way that we try to work in recruiting, those foundational things are still exactly the same. So are there changes? Yes. But are the main things still the main things? Yes, in that sense as well.
Wes, do you know Kevin Young, the new BYU basketball coach? Have you met him before? And just
know of him. Certainly was very well aware of him in his time in the NBA. You know, aware of his reputation in the NBA, and then had a chance to visit with him a little bit at our league meetings for the first time face to face.
He's, at least in Provo, he's made a pretty big splash with leverage in NIL and also kind of bringing in the NBA kind of model and promising players that, you know, he knows how to get into the NBA. Have you kind of noticed that? Has that kind of got its way across the country as far as that, you know, what he's doing, or is everybody doing it?
I know that they've been very aggressive in their recruiting. I'm aware of that, but to speak on the ins and outs of it, it wouldn't be fair to say one thing or the other because I don't know. But I do know that they've been aggressive in going after some of the top prospects in the country.
I covered Aziz when he was at Utah Valley. So
Yeah.
he's doing good.
Yeah, we're really proud of him. He was in a very difficult position last year at this time, not knowing whether he was going to be allowed to play when he believed, as we all did, that wasn't even going to be a question. That was, and then he dealt with a back injury, fought it the entire part of conference play, and leading up to it, he's really, really improved this summer. He's been crazy committed to his work ethic. And, you know, knock on wood, as long as he continues to stay healthy, he's a much better player than he was a year ago.
Coach,
You
talk
guys
about
beat BYU at BYU. I think it was the league opener or close to it.
It
What
was for
your
us,
impressions
yes.
of playing in Provo and kind of was it what it was cracked up?
You know, it's actually interesting. That's one of those places that in the basketball circles you've always heard is an underrated atmosphere and that there's underrated support. And so I'd heard that, and when I walked out, I was sold out, a great crowd, and it was loud. And I wasn't surprised because I'd heard that for so long, but it was what people said. I would say that.
Coach, talking about Aziz Bandego, as a coach, talk about the excitement to have him here in Kansas City for Media Days this year, knowing what he had to deal with last year with all the uncertainty, and just talk about the decision to bring him here and represent Cincinnati.
Yeah, just it's a significantly different preseason and off-season for Aziz this year than it was at this time last year. So to see it full circle and see how that's impacted him, and honestly, he's just so much more mentally healthy. we talk about that all the time, and we just did a charity game to raise money for that. I mean, Aziz is in such a better place not having to deal with all that distraction and all that unknown. And then he's really found himself within our program, being within our program for a year, kind of understands what we do and how we do it a lot better.
Short term with Day out, obviously you have Fizzle, but what would you do short term, assuming he's back?
With Day out?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Jizzle's.
I hope he's not out very long. I mean, I don't want to alarm anybody, and talked to Day 20 minutes ago, and he says he feels better today than he did last night. And that's usually a pretty good sign with anything. But again, I don't want to even think about him not playing to start the season. That's a couple weeks away. We'll scrimmage Pittsburgh. God, I don't think I'm allowed to.
You have a practice coming up.
If we do it in our next competition, it's a closed door scrimmage. Y'all gonna get me in trouble if you post that. We have a closed door scrimmage against a Division I opponent coming up. You know, that means just more reps for Connor at point guard, maybe more reps for somebody else, and then obviously, you know, Jizzle's getting a lot of reps there already.
This is kind of off topic from your team, but John Higgins mentioned that every 2 weeks they'll be sending out video to each head coach, kind of help them with training on calls. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that and how you'll utilize it.
I'm sorry about John.
John Higgins,
what?
he's so every 2 weeks he's going to send out video from different calls around the country to head coaches to help out with how they're, you know, training on how they're making calls. I'm just curious if you've got word of that or how you'll utilize that.
Yeah, there was a conference call or Zoom the other night to explain officiating through the season. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to working with John.
Scott Drew talked on the stage about roster building, and he said it's basically a year-to-year thing every year because no one knows what the long-term rules are, so you can't really plan long-term. Do you kind of see it like that? Are you expecting to have a significant roster turnover, like 4 to 5 players each year, or can you kind of get along with it?
I think our goal is to have continuity. I think there's real value in it. There's always been real value in it. I think when you have that, it can mean even more in today's culture and society. So I think our goal is to do that. But I think you're always aware of the times you're in and what's possible, and you're preparing for all kinds of contingencies. You know, I would say that to people out there that follow our program, celebrate those guys that came back this year. It's a big deal. It wasn't easy, and they came back for the right reasons because they wanted to be a part of our program. They believed in what we're doing, and they freaking love playing for Cincinnati and going to school at Cincinnati and living in the city. So celebrate that, and I think that'll encourage more to do it. That'll help us. But if we have roster turnover, it's not as catastrophic of an event as it was years ago. So I think when you can get it, it's a big deal. But when you don't have it, it's not the end of the world anymore. But we are trying to do that.
Any chance that Zealot is eligible to play?
They do?
Alvin Zealot?
I don't have any updates on that.
You announced earlier that Tyler McKinley's out for the year. I'm sure that's hard on him mentally, but are there any benefits for him being able to just kind of adjust to the college level by spending this freshman year sitting and rehabbing and getting stronger?
Yeah, this is one, it's hard to find a silver lining. You know what I mean? That's our job. Like, we talk about responding all the time. No matter what happens, let's respond the right way, and there will be a silver lining to everything we deal with, right? We all know that as adults. We're trying to teach young people that. So that'll exist. But in the short term here, man, this has been hard because, you know, the best way to improve is to be out there playing. And even if you can't be playing in the games, like Rayvon's situation, redshirting, he improved by being out there practicing every day. You know, with Tyler's injury right now, he's not able to do that. But in some way, and I'm not sure what it is yet, this will be a blessing. There will be a reason for this. and Tyler will be a better person and player for this experience because of how he's going to approach his rehab and how he's going to approach what he's going through this year, for sure.
When we talked to you 2 or 3 weeks ago, Connor Hickman talked after you. Kind of had a funny moment when he said he dunked over Rayvon Seamoss's neck, 6'2" white him over. What was your reaction to that, and what's it kind of been like getting his personality into the team?
Well, Seamoss ain't dunking over anybody. I'll tell you all that right now. And he wouldn't even be mad if I said that. He'd say, you're right. What you're talking about, I like that our guys enjoy our work every day. I like that they enjoy being around each other. And I like that they have fun with the process of what we do, not just the game. So when I see stuff like that, that's the joy I get to see every day from them to this point, that they get to show you guys, which is cool. Now, about dunking on people and all that crap, I don't care one bit about that. I mean, and you got a good team, and you got players on defense that are trying to go make plays, and you got offensive talent and athletes. The guy's going to get dunked on in practice. So I don't care one bit about that, and we shouldn't be worried about that. But I do like seeing them have some fun, because I see that every day. It's good for you guys and our fans to see that every once in a while.
Your non-conference, is that going to seem a little bit better than last year, maybe?
You know me well enough, Scott. You've already thought about it way more than I ever will. We play on November 4th, is that right? That's all I'm worried about right now. When it comes to real games, we get through November 4th, I'll start thinking about the next one. We're a one day at a time program. So, and we're at Cincinnati. We play in the Big 12. My guess is we're going to get our butts challenged, and that's fun, and we're looking forward to that. But this year, next year, I got no idea what's harder or not. I just know we're going to be ready when the ball goes up.
Kind of getting back to Dylan Mitchell, how much has having Aziz back there helped with Dylan's progressions defensively, with his versatility, being able to do so much at that end?
Yeah, I just think, the versatility, the length, and the style that we play, there's just so many opportunities to get out there and make defensive plays. And now we just got a number of guys that can do it. So I don't know if I think about it the same way you do, but you mentioned 2 guys that can make a ton of plays defensively, and there's a number of others, and when they're all connected and playing defense the way we're capable of, I think there's going to be a lot of plays to be made out there.
Coach, I asked you earlier about the difference from year 1 to year 2 in the Big 12. Obviously, last season was 18 conference games. This year, 20 conference games, 2 games a week roughly. Talk about the expectations and the preparation that has to go into having 2 games a week versus top 25 teams every night roughly in this conference.
Yeah, 20 games after Christmas without any buys, and that's for everybody in our league. Talk about a challenge that we didn't have a year ago. That's different. There's no bye week. And we talked about that with our team this week, because our guys, for the first time, their approach was good, but they looked a little run down the last couple of days for the first time. I tried to remind them, we're going to get into January, February, and we're going to have to go 2-3 days game, and we're going to have to do that for like 10 straight weeks. We're going to feel like this again. We got to learn how to push through it. That's a different experience than we had a year ago. It'll be that way for everybody, but that's where the work you do now to prepare for that's going to matter. The physical condition, the mental preparation, and then your resilience as a team is going to be put to the test. And finally, gosh, you hope that your depth ends up being a factor if you're deeper than some other teams.
Have you ever had a player or played with someone who played the game similar to Jizzle? And then if so, do you kind of look back on those moments and try to apply that to his game at all when you coach him?
I think to try to compare Jizzle to somebody else I've coached isn't fair to Jizzle. So I won't do that. But what I will say is that the guys that I coached when I was at UNCG in the backcourt, when they watch Jizzle play, they relate. They text me this after games last year. They relate to his competitive spirit. And the same thing with Day-Day. And a lot of those guys that I thought had terrific competitive spirit, competitive will. Guys that we built a program with at Greensboro, you know, Jizzle has a competitive spirit and competitive will that they recognize watching our games, and Day as well. And so his competitive spirit, his competitive will, his toughness, his edge, and Day in the same way. I think that's what we're about. That's what we've been about. This is my 14th year as a head coach. That's what we try to be about all 14 years. Jizzle does that in a lot of ways, but kind of compare some of the ins and outs wouldn't be fair to him. He's a terrific talent, and he's a terrific player. And guys, he keeps getting better and better. If he stops getting better right now, I'm going to be pissed. But if he keeps getting better and better and better, the sky's the limit for him.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.